I think the media should ask him every single day, why hasn't Barron Trump enlisted? Why isn't he part of this war? If this war is so worthwhile, why haven't you sent your kid?
What's up, friends? Welcome to Independent Americans. I am Paul Rieckhoff, and I am in Union Square, New York. It's a beautiful day in New York, and things are staying hot this summer. It is not letting up. There will be no days off, and I'm going to continue to give you content that will help you stay ahead of the curve. Leadership, national security, politics, civic life, all things America and beyond. We're going to continue to bring it to you all summer. We're pushing the edges of what a media network can be. Independent Americans is more than just a podcast. It is an ecosystem. It is a media platform. It is a community, and it's growing thanks to the support of folks like you. I just dropped my son off at basketball camp because the kids are deep in camp stuff, but I am continuing to try to bring light to contrast the heat. Here in New York, one thing I want to hit on is that yesterday Mamdani posted a video, Mayor Mamdani posted a video saying basically he wanted to arrest Netanyahu because he's a war criminal, but he can't. Here's what I'll tell you. This is absolutely unhelpful to the people of New York City. I think Mamdani was actually gaining a lot of momentum and uniting people. If he had stopped after the Knicks speech, he probably would have been in a much better position politically. But I think it reveals something. He is a political extremist, and he can't help going back to that role. It's kind of like Trump. Trump can't help himself. He always goes back to doing some extreme shit. And so does Mamdani. Maybe he was waiting till this moment. If he wants to arrest somebody in New York City, how about arresting Putin? Or how about arresting Trump? If he said he was going to arrest Trump, most New Yorkers would probably unite behind that. But Netanyahu has done some dastardly shit. I am a supporter of Israel. I am not a supporter of Netanyahu. I am a supporter of the people of Gaza. I am a supporter of children. I think that Israel has gone too far. But I don't need the mayor of New York making this a priority and making this issue a lightning rod for New York City that is ultimately divided on this issue, at least to some extent. I think it's a time for New York to be together. We just came out of the World Cup. We just came out of the Knicks. We don't need a fringe position dividing us and bringing all this negative attention. But look, he's a democratic socialist. He is now feeling himself. They're winning in a lot of places. And I think what you're seeing is the extreme left rising up. But the answer to the extreme right is not the extreme left. It's the majority. It's the middle. It's the moderates. It's the independents. It's the unaffiliated. It's me. It's you. It's us. We're 45%. They're only 27%, 26% Republicans and Democrats. MAGA is an even smaller percentage of that. The DSA is an even smaller percentage of that. So we're in a position right now where our politics, and especially the media, is being dominated by like 15% of the population, and the most extreme 15% of the population, the same percentage of the population that has been dominating our primaries over the last couple of months. That's why we have a primary problem, because only a small number of extremely devoted and extremely partisan and mostly extreme people are voting in these primary elections. Most of us, independents, are not voting. Whether it's in Arizona or Florida, independents have been blocked out of most of the primaries. But we are rising up to meet this moment. I think we can be a conscience and a unifying force, and I'm going to try to do that. So I'll continue to bring you quick hit podcasts. Every morning you'll get something in your inbox or at Apple, Spotify, and of course on YouTube. Be sure to check out the Morning Independent. It's our newsletter. We want to be like the Morning Brew for independence. So if you want TMI, too much information, or the Morning Independent, go to independentamericans.us. That is the hub for all things, where you can find ways to subscribe. You can add comments, you can get merch, and you can see what's coming up next. A sneak preview. Next Monday, I've got Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to be on the show, and that's a big deal. I want to try to talk to more governors, folks of the left, right, and center. I'm going to continue to bring you new independent voices, but J.B. Pritzker will be on the show Monday. I'm going to talk to him about what he's doing to connect and unite with independents, if he's going to run for president, what the hell happened with the Chicago Bears and how he managed to lose them. But I think he has a potential to be a moderate Democrat that can unite at least some moderate Democrats and attract some independents. We'll see. But we'll get into it. I also want to hear what he has to say about the National Guard in Illinois and how he's going to slow down Trump's deployment of National Guard troops in Illinois. He's mentioned Chicago as a target. So we're going to get into all that with Pritzker next week. I had Wes Moore a couple months ago. I had Mike Sherrill a couple months ago. I had Mike Lawler, the Republican, who was up for re-election a couple months ago. Want to get him back on, and others, including Don Bacon. But let me know who you want to hear from and who you want to see. And we'll continue to add light to contrast to heat, continue to call out the status quo in politics and in media, and try to offer an alternative, a leadership alternative, and some hope for the future. We are bringing a community and a pipeline of independents who are meeting this moment and ready to rise to the fight. So those are my thoughts today from here in beautiful New York City, Union Square. If you've never been here, you should come. There's, of course, a statue of George Washington just on the other side, the original independent American who should always be our spirit animal, the guy who warned us about the parties, who warned us about the division, who refused to be king. His role modelness is necessary now more than ever. But here I also want to give you a quick media episode. Yesterday, I was on a blitz. I've been on a blitz all week, especially around the Iran news, which is, I think, the most important issue facing us right now, because 4 Americans have come home in flag-draped coffins, one of them to here in New York City, a young sergeant who was killed. She will be returned to Queens for a memorial this week. But the Iran war is front and center. There's a lot more going on beyond that. So I went to MSNBC first, did some live response with Nicole Wallace. Big shout out to her at MS Now for having me on with such regularity. But I offered my perspective in there. Then I hauled ass and went over to CNN and talked to Erin Burnett about Iran, about the politics of Trump dealing with the casualties, and about the 8th country he wants to hit militarily. If you don't know about this, you will now. Here it is, a special media-based episode with some of our clips. I'm going to continue to bring these. Let me know if you like these, if they're helpful, but they're quick. I cut out all the commercials, at least from the networks, and you get my perspective unfiltered. My thanks to all these shows that have me on with regularity. I haven't been on Fox in a while, but I'm happy to go there or anywhere else. I go on News Nation, which is right of center. I go on MS Now, which is left of center. I go see on CNN, which is more in the middle, I think. But I'm going to continue to bring it. And they help distribute our message and help bring people into this community. But this will be a summer with no breaks. There will be no rest. There will be no days off. You got to find your own time to get some breaks and take care of your health and take care of your mental health and take care of your family, take care of your finances and all that other shit, and enjoy your summer. But in the meantime, I'll give you a quick way to understand what's happening, to cut through the bullshit, and most of all, stay vigilant. Thanks for sticking with us. Keep spreading the word. Subscribe. Give us all the stars and all that good shit. And until next time, stay vigilant.
And your thoughts to what we've seen today.
It's a somber and humbling experience, and one that I'm glad the country hasn't turned its eye from. I know it's summertime and people don't want to be focused on the news, and a lot of folks are checked out, but you need to learn the stories of these young soldiers who were taken from us far too soon. I'm glad you mentioned the name of Angel Rampersat, 28 years old from here in Queens, who showed her face. That is the human cost of war. But what Trump's doing is one of the most dangerous kinds of propaganda. To say that he knows what those soldiers thought or felt, and to blur the separation that we've worked hard to create between our people and our politics. Our troops should be insulated from the politics. We worked very hard to teach this country after Vietnam to separate the war from the warriors. What he and Hegseth have tried to do in the last 24 hours, especially, is ram it back together and make it seem like he's got a MAGA army and everybody's all in and they're all signed up to just fight in his war in Iran. And that is very, very dangerous to our national security, to our recruiting, to the civil-military bond that exists in this country. And I think it's a sign of desperation, but we need to continue to call him out on it. And also, if he cares so much about our troops, where is the VA secretary? We heard yesterday from the Agriculture Secretary. We've heard from Hegseth. Why haven't we heard from Secretary Doug Collins about what he's doing to prepare the Department of Veterans Affairs for a whole new generation of wounded and a whole new generation potentially of kinds of wounds? We know we weren't prepared at the VA after the last two forever wars. They may not be prepared now. We need to hear from him on budget requests and just the fact that they exist and whether or not they'll be prepared to take care of a whole new generation of wounded.
Months ago, you declared had been completed victoriously with every single objective achieved. Were those objectives achieved 4 months ago?
No one ever stated that every single missile was gone. The question is at scale against an opponent like the United States of America, which went toe-to-toe with them and Iran couldn't.
You stated on March 8th, day 9 of the war on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
So just to review, you will not answer whether your statement made on the 14th day of the war that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and made combat ineffective was a truthful statement to the American people as you sit here and ask for tens of billions more.
Paul, I know you're a harsh critic of members of both parties, but this wasn't partisan at all. This was just, does Pete Hegseth agree with Pete Hegseth? I thought it was a very effective line of questioning.
I think that's right. I think Ossoff was effective. And I think you also saw frustration from Republicans yesterday, which underscores how unpopular this is and how much Hegseth is in a hot seat. We talked about it yesterday, but I think it's important to see his posture. His shoulders are lower. He's not quite so cocky. He was definitely irritated because he has to ask people for something after he blew past them for really the last year, but especially since this war began. He didn't ask Congress for permission. He didn't ask them for funding. He was all gas, no brakes with both middle fingers up. And now he has to go back with hat in hand and ask them for more money because they can't square the numbers. And I think it just underscores that you can't trust Pete Hegseth. I mean, I debated Pete Hegseth on another war on this network 20 years ago, and he used a lot of the same lines of arguments. He's been a culture warrior ever since. But I think the human cost is what's really stacking up for them. It's what Trump doesn't want to focus on. You'll see him with the killed in action. You won't see him at Walter Reed. You won't see him with any wounded. And I think that's very, very important because he doesn't want to show that because it resonates with the American public in a very popular way. The other thing you won't see is Barron Trump. You won't see him enlisting. You won't see him talking about it. And he's 20 years old. One of the soldiers that was killed was 19 years old. So I think the media should ask him every single day, why hasn't Barron Trump enlisted? Why isn't he part of this war? If this war is so worthwhile, why haven't you sent your kid? I think that is a valid question for a commander-in-chief who's willing to send other people's sons and daughters to die.
To develop a nuclear industry, which would draw on unproven uranium ore deposits to try to meet energy needs at home. That would free up more of its oil production for export and boost revenues. Saudi Arabia insists its intentions are peaceful, although Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto leader of the country, said in 2018 that if Iran ever develops a nuclear weapon, his nation will follow suit. Saudi Arabia is now under threat by Iran, in part because of our conduct in the region. This has nothing to do with America first. And I know that, again, along with being post-fact, we're holding Trump to his own commitments and political promises over a decade on the world stage. But this is just pickled in 10 years of cozy business alliances between Jared Kushner and bin Salman, bizarre carrying of the official state messaging of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, not the United States intelligence services, when it comes to the slaughter of Jamal Khashoggi. And this is, again, another nuclear program in a region that American service members are currently risking their lives trying to stabilize. Your thoughts?
This is the most corrupt administration we've ever seen. I feel like every single deal should have a public disclosure of conflicts of interest because we have no idea how deep the ties go. But I think it's even something bigger. I think it's the best indication that Trump has lost the war in Iran because the Saudis don't trust Trump to take out Iran's nuke capacity, so they have to build their own. This is an indictment of his war. This says that we're worried that Trump can't take it out. We're worried the Americans are going to leave, and we need a backup plan. And their backup plan is to develop their own nukes because I mean, I would hope that at least the next generation would say no to another war in the Middle East if that came to the fore. But this one is going south. The likelihood is high that eventually, if not Trump, the next president will pull the U.S. out of the Middle East. The Iranian threat will not be neutralized. And this is the insurance policy for the Saudis. Independent Americans, if you watch or listen to the show, you know the 2026 primaries are taking shape. You also know you can trade on the biggest political races on Kalshi. With Kalshi, you can trade on major primaries, election outcomes, and the biggest political storylines as they happen. And it's primary season, going into the biggest midterms ever. So you can trade on, for example, the Maine Senate election. Graham Plattner is out now. Troy Jackson will be up against Susan Collins. Right now, Susan Collins is trading at 36%. Which means a $100 trade would pay out $265.86 if she wins that election, which is right now where I'm putting my money. The big one, who will be the presidential nominees? On the Democratic side, Gavin Newsom trading at 19%, meaning a $100 wager will earn you out $473.45 if you want to get on the Gavin Newsom bandwagon, or AOC, Rahm Emanuel, Buttigieg, Andy Beshear, Mark Kelly. Who do you think it's going to be? They're all up there. And on the Republican side, J.D. Vance trading at 40%, meaning a $100 wager will earn you out $239.90 if J.D. Vance becomes the nominee. Donald Trump Jr. is up there. Donald Trump himself is up there. Tucker Carlson, Ivanka Trump trading at 1.3%. They're all there. And finally, a fun one. Will the U.S. confirm that aliens exist? Because this year, you never know. If you say it's before 2027, there is a 7.2% chance. If you say before 2029, that is trading at 24%, meaning you will earn on a $100 wager $388.29. So you have more money in your pocket when the aliens get here. Look, on Kalshi, you can trade against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. As the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your positions. And for a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code INDEPENDENT. That's independent like independent Americans to get $10 when you trade 10. Kalshi, Kalshi, trade on anything. 18 and older, restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Even contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and availability in the markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see Kalshi.com/regulatory. Independent Americans, there is a lot going on, and you can trade on all of it on Kalshi.
To even contemplate, just the human cost. And then, Paul, let me throw a wrench into all of this, right? We show on the map Strait of Hormuz, and then you look at the Red Sea. The Washington Post is reporting that Trump is weighing military strikes in another country, really far away from here, actually in Africa. It's not even on this part of the map, okay? All the way over on the west coast of Africa, Mali. Landlocked country. So that would be the 8th country that he has had military strikes against since he's been back in office. What's your reaction to that?
Welcome to Trump's forever war. It's not just about war in Iran. It is war in Iran. It's about war around the world. And what's been obliterated is the American respect. What's been obliterated is the checks and balances from Congress. What's been obliterated is our economy. And what's been obliterated is the ability of the American government to slow down a president who wants to just wage war anywhere, anytime, any place. Yesterday was important because they finally asked for money, right, in a way that put them in front of Congress in a deferential position. But Congress has failed to stop him from doing anything. They can't get him out of Iraq. They can't Iran. They can't stop him from hitting Mali. And he's all gas and no breaks. And this has always been the worst case scenario for a president like Trump that does not care about public opinion, maybe doesn't care about the midterm elections, and definitely doesn't care about what Congress has to say, because now we've got 4 Americans coming home in flag-draped coffins. And that is the real cost of war that Americans aren't ready for.
And General, obviously yesterday, the president put out that post, not just referring to the Iran war as a military conflict or operation, when he had listed all the other wars as wars. And then he put the death toll. And the point that he was making was that this isn't really a war and not that many people have died. It seemed to be very clear the point he was making. But he went to Dover today for that dignified transfer for those 4 American soldiers that Paul just talked about. And I want to play again what he said when he was on the way to that transfer at Dover Air Base. Here he is.
All of them said very strongly, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. They won't have a nuclear weapon. So we're going to honor them.
Of course, General, he's referring to the 4 young dead troops that returned. What do you think when you hear that?
Well, of course, it's ridiculous. No, I mean, no serious person listening to that believes that the president heard that from these soldiers. This is not how soldiers talk, by the way. I mean, that's not how they would have said anything if they had the chance to speak to the president. And so I think the president undermines his own credibility every time he issues one of these sort of fairy tale things. And unfortunately, the people around him, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, they are guilty of echoing that as well. And it just seems like they're not serious. They haven't yet said, our objective is to do this, and therefore we're going to do everything necessary to achieve this. If it's stop them from getting a nuclear weapon, okay. But the language that comes from them is so unbelievable and unhelpful. And of course, we really need allies, Erin. This is not going to get done unless the rest of the world puts pressure on Iran. Until Iran feels economic and diplomatic pressure from everybody else, I think, honestly, they can ride this out much longer than we can.
Paul, you served in the Army. You work with veterans now. What's your reaction to what Trump said today that those 4 specific troops said and felt?
I think it's outrageous. I think it's disgusting. I think it's dangerous, because the worst thing you can do is assume you can speak for the dead. I mean, it's propaganda at its highest level. He's trying to portray that everybody in the military is on board with his political agenda. He's always pushed that forward, like everyone is a loyal minion in his army. And it's so much more complex than that. We've spent decades after Vietnam separating the war from the warriors, the people from the policy. And in the last 2 days, especially, he and Hegseth are jamming it together. If you don't support the war, you don't support our troops. And that is a very dangerous manipulation. And I think it's outright propaganda. It's not something you would do if you'd served in uniform. And it's not something you'd do if your kids were serving in uniform. So I'm going to continue to ask, some of these folks who died are around the same age as his son, Barron Trump, who's 20 years old. If it's such a noble cause, if everybody's all in, why isn't his own son signing up to enlist? That would show that everybody's really on board with his agenda, and it's just not happening.
He tells me the left and right are dreams for those without a clue. And when you wake, it's time to grow. And it's not cool to believe in school, but if I can say one thing, I've seen the children of the revolution and the good trouble they can bring. He says the red and blue are dead and independent is an attitude. An island in the sea of rhetoric and archipelago. He tells me the left and right are dreams for those without a clue. And when you wait, it's time to grow.
Powered by Righteous Media.